Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome and thank you for tuning in. I'm Ji Myung-gil in Seoul. Coming up on today's edition of Business Daily. Korea's consumer prices rose at the fastest pace in more than 5 years in August, due mainly to a sharp increase in food prices. A UN agency in Korea has praised the Moon Jae-in administration's people-centered policy agendas as it falls in line with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Don't go away and stay tuned for more stories. Korea's economy grew at a slower pace in the second quarter compared to the previous three-month period. The Bank of Korea said the nation's second quarter GDP hit $344 billion, inching up a meager 0.6% compared to the 1.1% seen in the first quarter. However, the central bank says second quarter figures were not far from market forecasts, given the base effect from the January to March period. Exports fell 2.9%, posting the lowest level in 34 quarters, on falling shipments of automobiles and chemical products, largely from China's THAAD retaliation. Meanwhile, the country saw improvements in both domestic consumption and facility investments, growing 1% and 5.1% respectively. Korea's exports have continued to grow, with August marking the 10th straight month of on-year gains. While inbound shipments also went up slightly during the month, the country's exports have exceeded its imports for more than 5 years. Ian Shin breaks down the numbers for us.
Global demand for products made in Korea is staying strong. The nation's trade ministry said Friday that outbound shipments for August saw double-digit growth for the 8th consecutive month, a first for the country since 2011.
With an on-year growth of some 17.4%, exports in August came to $47.1 billion. Among the exports, semiconductors saw all-time record shipments last month.
That record came to a whopping $8.76 billion. Among semiconductors, sales of Korean-made OLEDs and solid-state drivers known as SSDs reached all-time highs of some $860 million and $540 million, respectively. Overall, last month's shipments to China were up some 15.6% from the same period last year, posting the 10th consecutive month of on-year sales growth to the country. On-year exports to the U.S. also jumped by about 23%, while sales to the European Union saw a 43% rise. Korea's exports have outstripped its imports for more than 5.5 years now. And with the local semiconductors and cosmetics industries steadily growing, market researchers are expecting a rosy outlook for the nation's overall outbound shipments over the coming months. Ian Shin, Business Daily.
South Korea's consumer prices rose at the fastest pace in more than 5 years in August, mainly due to soaring prices of agricultural goods. Kim Hae-sung has the details.
The nation's consumer price index soared 2.6% on year in August, the biggest leap since April 2012. Statistics Korea attributed the rise to the floods and heat wave over the summer. Prices of fresh fruit and vegetables both spiked more than 22% on year, driving up agricultural product prices by more than 12% and contributing nearly 1 percentage point to the overall rise. Korea's consumer prices have been rising around 2% each and every month since January this year. On top of rising food prices, the price at the pump also continued to tick up, increasing 3.6% on year last month. Egg prices, which have soared in recent months due to an avian influenza outbreak, logged a slower pace of price gain in August, but still recorded a roughly 50% jump compared to the same month last year. The country's core inflation, which excludes food and energy prices, increased 1.4% on year. Kim Hae-sung, Business Daily.
And now turning over to the local bourse, we have our markets contributor Lee Ji-hye on the line with us. Hello, Ji-hye.
Hi, Myung-gil.
Now tell us how stocks performed on the last trading day of the week.
Sure. South Korean stocks were slightly lower today, with foreign investors continuing to unload local shares. The benchmark Kospi fell 0.23% to close at 2,357.69 this afternoon. The tech-heavy Kosdaq, on the other hand, is on a 7-day winning streak, up 0.63% to finish at 661.99. And across the main bourse market, bellwether Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motors were also up 1.78%, as well as Hyundai Mobis up 2.12%. And this comes as the nation's exports extended their double-digit growth to 8 months in a row as of August, up 7.4% on year. Imports also rose 14.2% on year last month.
And now tell us how Asian stocks traded overall, Jie.
Sure, Myung-gil. Asian shares were mostly higher Friday, taking cues from optimism on Wall Street, set off by a report showing spending growth by the U.S. consumers in July, along with wages and salaries. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index rose for 8 consecutive months in August and nudged closer to its highest in almost a decade. Caixin's China PMI beat estimates to post its biggest gain since February this year, starting the countdown to the Communist Party Congress to be held on October 18th, where the delegates will lay out a 5-year economic plan for China.
Right. Now, regarding North Korea, the Bank of Korea is said to be taking a wait-and-see approach to the situation. Can you tell us more on that?
Sure, Myung-gil. After the Bank of Korea kept rates on hold for the 14th consecutive month yesterday, local analysts say that they could limit gains for the Kospi looking ahead, adding that a rather sluggish August month can't be really good news for September either. On a brighter note, a turnaround may be expected in the third quarter, with gains expected in electronics exports, particularly with the release of Samsung's new smartphone, as well as other products from the IT sector. The central bank will also be releasing its revised estimate on the nation's GDP growth in October, with the board saying on Thursday that it foresees a moderate trend of recovery from improving job conditions and effects from the government's supplementary budget. This has been Lee Ji-hye for Business Daily.
The Korean government has requested China's Commerce Ministry to put an end to the ongoing THAAD retaliation against Korean companies. Top trade representatives from both countries met in China, where Korean officials told their Chinese counterparts that Korean firms doing business in China were facing difficulties due to the fallout over THAAD. They asked Chinese officials for support in resolving the matter. Korean automakers are the latest to fall victim to the retaliation, with tourism, retail, and cultural exports also badly hit. And amid the ongoing THAAD retaliations, many industries here in Korea are continuing to suffer. The dramatic fall in the number of Chinese tourists has raised the alarm in duty-free shops and travel agencies across the country that are now struggling just to survive. Elliot Kim has this story.
Since China began its retaliation over the U.S. deployment of the THAAD missile defense system in Korea, duty-free shops have suffered immense losses that are estimated at over $890 million. Sales have declined significantly since mid-March, resulting in Lotte Duty-Free reporting losses in the second quarter, and the company is not alone. Duta, SM, and other newly opened duty-free shops have suffered massive operating losses. With the number of Chinese tourists falling so significantly, all of Korea's 22 airport duty-free stores have recorded deficits, leading company executives to return their wages to provide emergency cash flow, hoping to keep the stores afloat. Yet, there is a growing concern that the stores will close down despite these efforts. Normally, the Korean cosmetics industry sees a significant portion of its sales come from China, but with that revenue source now removed, companies like Amore Pacific have seen their second quarter operating profits fall by more than half. Travel agencies have fared even worse. 90% of domestic travel agencies catering to Chinese tourists have now closed down their operations. Cheongju, Jeju, Yangyang, and Muan airports were all heavily reliant on flight links to China, but with no travelers, they're all left seeking support from the government just to survive. Damage from the THAAD retaliation continues to snowball, with the resolution unlikely to come unless diplomatic conditions between Korea and China improve. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
LG Electronics has unveiled its latest flagship smartphone, the V30, hot on the heels of rival Samsung's showcase of the Galaxy Note 8. Competition between the Korean tech titans is white hot, not only in smartphones but also in OLED TVs, with Samsung also revealing a new lineup of HD sets to challenge LG's throne. Yoo Jin-hee reports.
Not to be outdone by Samsung, LG Electronics revealed its latest and most advanced flagship phone on Thursday at the 2017 IFA trade show in Berlin. Tech experts are raving about the new V30 handset following their first look at the device, praising LG for designing a powerful, no-nonsense product. LG has taken a back-to-basics approach with its newest smartphone after coming under criticism of relying too much on gimmicky and non-practical features in its previous products. Although seemingly overshadowed by the unveiling of Samsung's Galaxy Note 8 earlier this month, LG appears ready to go head-to-head with its bigger rival in the high-end smartphone market.
No other smartphone introduced this year will offer the kind of technology and the capabilities of the LG V30.
The V30 sports a huge 6-inch Quad HD screen and a dual camera, as well as powerful audio features that is widely seen as a clear competitive advantage over its rivals. It is also water and dust resistant, features voice and facial recognition technology, and a fingerprint sensor. While LG looks to challenge the Galaxy Note 8, its rival Samsung has thrown down the gauntlet in the OLED television market, where LG currently sits on top of the pile. Samsung exhibited its new premium line of QLED sets at the IFA, expanding its range to 14 different models between 49 inches to 88 inches in size. Adding fuel to the competition, Apple has sent out invitations for a major event on September 12, where it's expected to reveal the long-awaited iPhone 8. The annual event will be held at Apple's new headquarters in California, where the company is also likely to unveil its latest Apple Watch and Apple TV products. With new high-end smartphones being released by Apple, Samsung, and LG just days apart this month, another showdown is looming in the market that could make or break their fortunes for the rest of the year. Yoo Jin-hee, Business Daily.
At a meeting earlier today, Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon said the government will revise the country's labor law to clarify the scope of regular wages. His remarks comes one day after a Seoul District Court ruled against automaker Kia Motors in a class action wage lawsuit filed by its labor union. On the local economy, the minister said despite 3% growth being possible this year on the back of recovering industrial output and rising exports, the target was becoming more difficult to reach. He pointed to the lack of wealth distribution and soaring inflation, as well as the impact of geopolitical tensions with North Korea as negative factors for growth. Kim also identified China's retaliation over THAAD and the restructuring of Korea's auto industry as possible headwinds. President Moon Jae-in's marathon policy briefings with various government agencies came to an end on Thursday. The Welfare, Labor, and Gender Equality Ministries took the opportunity to lay out their goals in the coming years. Park Ji-won tells us more on what was discussed in that final session.
During Thursday's policy briefing session, President Moon emphasized that the three ministries of welfare, labor, and gender equality are key to realizing his administration's main goal of achieving economic growth that is inclusive and led by rising incomes.
저출산, 일자리, 격차 해소에 드는 예산은 복지 예산이면서 성장 예산입니다. 사회 안전망을 확충함과 동시에 가계의 가처분 소득을 늘려 소비와 경제를 살리는 포용적 성장과 소득주도 성장의 길이라는 사실을 각 부처가 국민들께 적극적으로 설명하고 또 성과로 보여주기 바랍니다.
The Welfare Ministry, to tackle the nation's low birth rate, plans to give families an allowance of about $90 a month for each child under the age of 5 and raise the rate at which families use public child care to 40%. The birth rate stood at 1.03 this year, the lowest level ever, which was a further drop from last year's 1.17. As for employment, the ministry will focus on creating quality jobs in the medical industry.
The ministry plans to create 100,000 new jobs in the healthcare industry, which will improve the nation's healthcare services. New jobs in the healthcare and medical industry are known to lead to more employment in other industries too.
The Labor Ministry's main goal is to reduce irregular or contract employment by encouraging employers to make them permanent and full-time. It also wants to reduce working hours.
The ministry acknowledges that the nation's high suicide rate and low happiness levels, as well as its low productivity, are all influenced by long working hours. Therefore, the ministry will push to revise the nation's Labor Standards Act to limit legal working hours to 52 hours per week.
The Gender Equality and Family Ministry also plans to actively help women re-enter the job market after they start families and to achieve greater equality in pay and working conditions. The ministry also aims to push for new laws to prevent gender-based violence and to increase support for the victims of gender-related crimes. Park Ji-won, Business Daily.
The Moon Jae-in administration's people-centered policy agenda is in line with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. That's according to a UN official based in Korea who says the government's initiative to improve the lives of average citizens follow the UN's 17 goals for 2030. Oh Soo-young has the details.
Korea has the potential to initiate people-centered development both at home and abroad, according to the UN sub-regional head for the Asia-Pacific, Kilapati Ramakrishna. He said the Moon Jae-in administration's inclusive people-centered policy mantra falls in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
The key goal that the United Nations is talking about is leaving no one behind. And the Moon administration has taken that approach through a number of different policies about gender mainstreaming, a very major topic, youth innovation and youth employment, another major topic, and using science, technology and innovation for all these various goals is another one. So it's a wonderful opportunity to work in a country that is constantly adopting policies to get better, to be more competitive and to help its people.
Ramakrishna heads UNESCAP's East and Northeast Asia office, bringing UN initiatives into the region, as well as making policy recommendations for social development. Based in Korea's western city of Songdo, the office has worked closely with the Korean government, civil society and multiple stakeholders to share the country's unique development experience.
The experience that Republic of Korea has had in reaching its cherished goals is aspirational for many of the other developing countries. They want to be like a Republic of Korea.
In initiating new socio-economic reforms, Ramakrishna recommended that the Korean government consults various policy recommendations made by the UN.
The United Nations, through its Financing for Development Conference, identified that the tax to GDP ratio has to increase in a lot of the developing countries, and Korea is no exception. So to the extent that the government is invested in terms of achieving those sustainable development goals, these issues become central. And of course, money has to come from somewhere. And there are innovative policies. You know, one of the things that the Financing for Development Conference does, which UNESCAP is shepherding for all of the Asia-Pacific countries, has a number of ideas in terms of advancing those goals.
Looking beyond Korea's borders, the director also stressed the importance of a people-centered approach in achieving regional cooperation with its neighbours in Northeast Asia to promote trade, integration and peace on the Korean Peninsula. He says it's a long-term but worthwhile project that his office is pushing for.
And particularly people-to-people interactions is going to be key because a lot of youngsters, they are interested in their future today, and then they realize that working with each other has more potential to meet their aspirations than fighting with each other. The transformation of this sub-region is going to be tremendous and something to really look forward to, not only in terms of how these countries solve their problems, but the enormous wealth of knowledge and experience that they can bring to the rest of the world is going to be really transformational. It's something well worth watching and as we move forward.
오수영 Business Daily.
Time now for a look through some important global business stories from the week with Eunice Kim joining us in the studio. Hello, Eunice.
Hello, Myung-gil.
So a huge weather event, Hurricane Harvey, has rocked major U.S. energy hubs, and its impact is beginning to be felt by energy markets as well. What could this mean for the gas prices?
Right, Myung-gil, that is the question on many minds, including right here in Korea. The rainfall being described as biblical, and for some perspective, a year's worth of rain fell on Houston and the surrounding areas in just a few days. For the U.S. energy market, it's meant a third of the country's refinery operations crippled and port traffic slows to a halt. Take a look.
It's been less than 2 days since the rain stopped and the sun came out in Houston, Texas. Not a minute being wasted as rescue teams and volunteers begin surveying in earnest the trail of destruction left by the weather event dubbed Harvey. First a hurricane, then a tropical storm, the unprecedented deluge dropped some 130 centimeters of rain in less than 4 days, submerging America's fourth largest city of 3 million workers. So far, 100,000 homes are affected, 30,000 residents living in shelters. Moody's estimates the loss in output in the weeks ahead will amount to $6 to $8 billion. The immediate economic concern, however, is the disaster's impact on the U.S. energy industry. Southern Texas and the Gulf of Mexico that lines it represents America's energy hub, home to nearly a third of U.S. oil refineries. U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry, surveying the damage Thursday local time, told reporters gas prices will inevitably rise.
So close to 30, upwards over 30% of the production is offline. The Colonial Pipeline has been shut down, for instance. That is a major deliverer of refined product to the southeastern United States. Gas prices are going to go up because of the cut in supply.
Already, the impact is being felt at gasoline pumps 360 kilometers north of Houston. In Dallas, drivers looking to refuel their vehicles are finding lines at the pump if the stations aren't already out of gas. On the markets, gasoline futures rally to levels not seen in more than 2 years. The U.S. Energy Department on Thursday began releasing an emergency stash of 1 million barrels from its Strategic Petroleum Reserve, with more possibly to come.
Well, right now we've lost probably between 3 and 4 million barrels a day of refining capacity. That would be the case for a couple days, I would expect. You'll have lingering effects from this storm for probably as long as 2 months. Generally speaking, when you have a refinery that goes into cold shutdown, it takes a good 10 to 20 days to bring that back up to full operational level.
Now, certainly one of the worst floodings in the U.S. in decades, and a extreme reality too there. But now I understand those shutdowns described in your report could also impact supplies here in Asia as well, right, Eunice?
Yeah, you're right. This is, of course, still a very developing situation, but there are eyes right here in Korea closely watching how widespread the impact could become. It doesn't stop at refining capacity. Houston also houses one of America's largest ports, and a lion's share of LPG shipments, that's liquefied petroleum gas, in fact head for Asia. So buyers in Korea, Japan, and China bracing for impact. They have about 14 million tons of propane and butane ordered from the U.S. this year, according to energy consulting firm FGE. But Bloomberg reports not a single LPG tanker has left the Gulf Coast since Monday, as ports remain closed, and it is uncertain when they will reopen again.
Now, we've seen disasters like this in the past turn around a president's agenda. Now, the cost of cleaning up will be staggering, I imagine.
Oh, I think you're right about that. And, no one's putting a definite number on what the cost might be. We do have estimates as high as $100 billion or more. And we've got Texas Governor Greg Abbott saying he thinks it will be even higher than that, far exceeding the toll of Hurricane Katrina, which incidentally happened 12 years ago this week. But U.S. media asking whether this could change President Donald Trump's more drastic plans, such as deep budget cuts. Visiting Texas this week, he pledged the full support of the U.S. federal government in rebuilding the disaster zones. There are also reports the president is considering tying in raising the government debt ceiling to an initial disaster aid bill. Now, this would mark a notable shift from the campaign Trump that we saw last week in Arizona, who had threatened a government shutdown if Congress does not create a budget for that wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
Well, I think it'll be interesting to see how the promised border wall between the U.S. and Mexico unfolds, as much of it will be in Arizona. Thank you for the report, Eunice.
You bet.
That brings us to the end of our program. Have a great start to your weekend. We'll be back with more business news next week. As always, thank you for watching. Goodbye.